Hello and greetings everyone. Thanks for being there. And this is the first of a series of webinars about youth sailing. And the whole idea is to help boys, girls to evolve through youth sailing from, let's say, age 13, 14 after the Optimist or equivalent. And also how in a North American context to possibly fix youth sailing, and we'll go through some of the limitations of the current system, but also very concrete solutions about how to proceed. We'll go through a range of slides, and you will be able to put your comments in the comments section, and also your questions. We'll have Q&As after the slides. We'll also watch a few videos. All right. You will recognize the outline of the webinar as we circulated it through the internet, and we'll go through all these considerations. So it's quite a lot of material, and let's say it is a big picture webinar, but with plenty of useful, I think, considerations that can be immediately implemented at the level of a family, at the level of a club, even at the level of a federation, provincially, nationally in Canada, at the state level, at the federal level. And the first question I would suggest that is really important to ask is what are the goals? When a kid starts sailing in the Optimist, it's usually through a summer camp. There are no questions asked, and there are no real goals. You say, okay, learn to sail. But afterwards, what are the goals? And many considerations are at stake, because when adolescence comes, children, young adults nearly have many competing demands on their time, and maybe their goals are evolving. Is it sailing for life, the goal that is being sought? Is it sailing for gold? Is it on racing, on leisure, offshore, or just dinghy racing? There are many considerations to be taken into account, and we'll cover that, but we'll focus on dinghy racing, and it's a big picture presentation. On the right there, on the slide, you see a graph that comes out of some US sailing publication, and it comes with a concept which I think is very strong. It is to square the pyramid, so to make the sport a much more accessible sport. Right now, youth sailing is very much of an elite sport. There is a huge abandonment rate, so you see a few get to sail, and that can be changed, I think. And my take is that if youth sailing is to become truly successful, even to get more champions and to get more elite sailors, one need to square that pyramid. And youth sailing is evolving because sailing is evolving. And this Friday, Saturday in New York, you will see Sail GP in action. These are boats that are expected to reach over 50 knots. While the boats that are being used in youth sailing are old designs that are nowhere that kind of speed. So youth sailing needs to adapt, I think, to the new reality of sailing. And first question to ask is to go single-handed or double-handed after the Optimist, or both actually. And this is something that is often neglected. The Optimist sailors don't have these double-handed skills. They will stay years after years in the Optimist sailing single-handed. My take is that it is essential to bring reasonably early on in the sailing education of a youth sailor double-handed skills to get teamwork, communications, the particular boat handling that comes with double-handed sailing, dealing with several sails, tuning a stayed rig. This is important. And even if the objective is to sail single-handed, these double-handed skills should be taught at some point, and maybe just after the Opti actually. What is the face of youth sailing in North America after the Optimist? That's it. It's typically the Laser Radial and the Club 420. So not the 420 as it is known in Europe, but the Club 420, which is a heavy version of the 420. Now, are those the right boats after the Optimist? And let's remember that in a not too distant past, you had other boats involved. One of them was the Bite. The Bite was an intermediate boat between the Optimist and the Laser Radial. The Bite was still strong about 10 years ago, but it has essentially vanished in North America. And so now Optimist sailors are in most situations asked to move from the Optimist to the Laser Radial. And my take is that this is a huge step. It's a huge step that has been implemented, unfortunately, far too many times, and most of the sailors are just unable to achieve that for the simple reason is that their weight out of the Optimist is way lower than the minimum weight required for the Radial. We are talking about 40 pounds difference. And it's about the same situation with the Club 420. In addition, the Club 420 is a heavy old design, but it's a design just for North America. So when it comes to international sailing, Club 420 outside North America is a non-starter. So how to fix that youth sailing pathway? My take is that what is essential is to have boats to smoothen the transition out of the Optimist, to have at least one single-handed dinghy and one double-handed dinghy. And we need to find the boats, to identify the boats that have the best strategic added value in terms of a learning platform, in terms of regatta opportunities nationally and internationally, to have a boat that is truly attractive to youth sailors, boats that are affordable and ideally that can also be club owned. And my take is that the two best candidates to achieve that in North America are the Laser 4.7 and the RS Viva. Time for a video.
A warm welcome. Today we show you the Gold Fleet here at the Junior Worlds in Kiel. Who's going to make it? At the boys and at the girls, who's going to go for gold? Decision day in Kiel Sailing City at the Laser 4.7 Youth World Championships. 127 girls and 262 boys representing 39 countries had started on August 2nd into the competition. And today's final day showed a heart-stopping finish in the 4.7 boys class between two very close competitors and a confident winner in the girls class. Italian Guido Gallinaro sailed an almost perfect first race today, leading from Mark II onwards the entire race to finish way ahead of his closest rival, Greek Dimitrios Papadimitriou, who came in 12th position. In this moment before the final race this afternoon, Gallinaro looked already like the new world champion. Great sailing conditions with winds around 16 to 20 knots created the scene for a very special drama in this final race. Dimitrios Papadimitriou did what he had to do. He dominated the race from the beginning and won the final race within 1.48 minutes lead. So now it was all on Guido Gallinero. He had to come in 11th position, or better, to still clinch the title, but he struggled to get again into the favorite position and finished this final race as 39th to lose the World Championship title in the...
So you see, this video shows two champions actually. Guido Gallinero, who made second there, became first the next year, and the year after he became the world champion in the radial, while Dimitris Papadimitriou became just the next year the world champion in the radial. So these are top-notch sailors, and to give you perspective here, Dimitris Papadimitriou is likely to be representing Greece at the Olympics next year in 2020 in the laser standard. So in a matter of 4 years, he will have gone from the Laser 4.7 to the Olympics. So the point here is that the Laser 4.7 is producing champions. And despite the bad reputation it has in North America, this boat is developing amazing sailors. And it's the most obvious single-handed boat to add to the pathway, because people will typically sail it 1 or 2 years. This is a U17 boat, so the maximum age is age 16, and very often will go to the radial and for boys to the laser standard. So this is the first one, I think, the obvious one to add very forcefully to the pathway in North America. The second one is DRS Viva. Let's watch a video.
Why is a fever fun in this breeze?
Because it goes fast. It's gnarly. Bro. Yeah, just really fast, really fun.
It was windy today. It was probably gusting over 20-25 knots. Some of the kids really struggled, but the kids who were managing to get those boats to go, man, did they move today.
So this is DRS Viva, and that boat is developing very much. It's already very much developed in places like the UK. It is being strongly promoted in France by the federation, in Italy. It is really an amazing double-handed dinghy for youth sailors. And it's also a very sturdy boat, in the sense that it can be club owned. It's a so-called plastic boat, and one learns also asymmetric spinnaker sailing, which is amazing on a small dinghy. And 2 sailors out of the Optimist can jump into the boat and learn double-handed skills immediately. Now one can also start the Viva without sailing the Optimist. One can also sail the Viva while sailing the Optimist. Some of the most successful coaching programs will involve both single-handed and double-handed sailing, some kind of cross-training. So it has huge potential, and along with the Laser 4.7, I think these are the 2 most strategic equipment to add in the North American context, and that will enable sailors to get to the next stage. Now at the top you see again the traditional Laser Radial and Club 420, but other platforms like the 29er, the NACRA 15, and the I-420, the regular 420, the international 420. So all these boats out of the Laser 4.7 or the RS Viva will be mostly sailable. And the skills, a lot of the double-handed skills also will already be learned through the RS Viva. So this is essentially how things could evolve. Now, in terms of a particular situation, there are not that many options because you need a fleet, you need a club with a coach that has the abilities to train into these, one or two platforms. But so these multiple choices that exist, 5 of them, are not really present in many places. And it's one of the difficult things to do for a competitive youth sailor is to know where to go. But this is not the only thing that is available. And let me jump to another buzz, the new buzz, which is wind foiling. And here you see the picture of a girl who actually was last year at the Open Big Worlds, and now she's into wind foiling at age 14. So sailing is changing, and wind foiling is amazing, and of course it goes 2, 3, 4 times faster than the regular boats, at least 2, 3 times faster. And windsurfing is really interesting. This is a picture of a recent podium in Poland where they promote strongly windsurfing, and you see kids at age 8, 10 who start windsurfing there on windsurfs with small sails. Let's have a look at the equipment that is being used in Europe for learning windsurfing. So windsurfing, that's 2 medals out of 10 at the 2024 Olympics, but kiteboarding is coming too. So windsurfing, kiteboarding, it's now it's going to be 30%, let's say, of the sport. And the trend, of course, even with kiteboarding, is foiling. So these are the new trends, and I think it's important to let youth sailors find their way through those various directions they can take in youth sailing. But from my perspective, and that's really the theme of this webinar, is the focus on the 4.7 and the RS Viva. There is also an extensive article in my blog on why these 2 boats should be the chosen ones to further develop youth sailing in North America. Now, in the situation of a particular sailor, how to choose the right boat or equipment, difficult thing, but you need to figure out what are the goals of the sailors. What does he or she prefer, single-handed, double-handed? What are the clubs and training opportunities nearby? You cannot really learn sailing on your own. What are the opportunities for racing and at what level nearby? If there is no racing opportunities, or if it's a really low level, don't expect any miracles in terms of advanced sailing development. Is the chosen pathway compatible with school, with academic education? Many youth sailors give up on sailing at age 16, 17, 18 because of pressure from school. Is the preferred pathway compatible with the physique of the sailor? Many boats require a very specific physique, and it's a matter of not making mistakes in that regard. And there are the financial considerations. If your sailor wants to do, for example, the NACRA 15, in addition to having to find a crew, the financial implications are very different from, let's say, sailing the windsurf Techno 293. And another consideration is how to choose a club and how to choose a coach. Now, hopefully your sailor will stay in the same club and everything is fine, and you have a suitable coach there and a suitable group of youth sailors that are going to evolve with your kid, or if you're a sailor, your friends. But it's important to ask questions. And let me go through a bunch of questions. In what boats is there a good group of sailors? You want your sailor to evolve with sailors of the same level, let's say, and you need to figure out what is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years in that particular club. You need to figure out if there are quality club-owned boats or if you need to buy one. I've seen very old, totally uncompetitive Club 420s in some clubs. Don't expect the sailor to be competitive in a boat that is not competitive. What's the training schedule? Some clubs offer glorified summer camps. They don't really understand that from age 13, 14, 15, the youth sailor is an athlete. It's not just a kid. And you need a real rigorous training program to get the sailor evolve. And some clubs don't get it. So you need really to ask the questions. What is the training schedules? How many times a week? And I think the magic number there to search is three trainings per week to start making real progress. In the Canadian context, what are the plans for the winter? How can a youth sailor in Canada be competitive internationally if he or she trains 2 or 3 times less than a European sailor? There is a need for winter training. What are the credentials of the coach, and also what are the costs, including regattas, including international travel, including winter training. And I think that with these kind of questions and this kind of approach, you may be able to help youth sailing to adapt to the new phase of sailing. I think youth sailing must adapt or it will continue to decline. The status quo of relying on the Club 420 and the laser, in my view, especially the Laser Radial, is not an option. Youth sailing compared to Europe is very much underdeveloped in North America. And it's important to let youth sailors to try new disciplines, new equipment. At the local level, at the club level, if you have, let's say, between 4 and 10 committed sailors and committed parents, you can make a difference. You can create a high performance group and develop a program that is going to be strong and make a lot of sense to further promote your sailing and promote also each of the sailors and help them to become better. Clubs are too often old-fashioned, reluctant to change, and I'm convinced that parents and sailors can make a positive difference. Oh, one more thing. Yes, I did not talk yet about the open beak. Now it's called the open skiff. And it's really important to emphasize the role of that boat. That boat is, of course, much less known than the Optimist, but a lot of the presentation I made is really applicable to what to do after the open beak. The open beak is suitable at the competitive level up to 120, 125 pounds, so a bit heavier than the Optimist. So that means at least one more year. And it's a boat that has significant fleets in some countries, like Italy. Yeah, you saw that video. You saw also probably that at the beginning of this year there were the World Championships in New Zealand, and Russell Coutts is the gentleman who basically promoted strongly the open beak in New Zealand, and it's really booming. It's really booming. It's a much more affordable, strict one design boat, and it's fun. It's fast. You can see the kind of impressions it gives. So what is important to know is that in the Optimist, to succeed, you need to meet a bunch of parameters, and you need to have an early development of the sailor. And I've seen so many sailors who are going to be 13, already too heavy for the Optimist, and they are left into the Optimist without any chance of realizing any kind of results. And I think, for example, for these kids, moving for 1 or 2 years in a boat like the open skiff makes a lot of sense. So it's an interesting boat. Also, if you take a club that does not have that many means, financial means, but wants to have club-owned boats, it's a much more suitable boat than the Optimist, because the Optimist is very fragile, and a high-end, top competitive level Optimist is not a cheap boat. Certainly much more expensive, significantly more expensive than the open beak. So it's a boat of interest, and as I mentioned, most of the presentation I made is applicable also to what to do after the open skiff. And just a note, the open skiff produces champions too. The gentleman who placed second at the Youth Olympics last year in the NACRA 15 is a former world champion in the open skiff. So it's not like only the Optimist is producing the next champions. The open skiff is now on board to produce also top champions, like also other boats like the RS Terra, for example, in the UK. But in the North American context, the second largest fleets after the Opti for that kind of age group are certainly the open skiff. So I think this is the time maybe to go for a bunch of questions. So I'm going to have a look at what you write in your comments, but if you have any questions right now, let me know, and I'm going to try to figure out what I can, at least what I can comment on. Okay, here I have a very nice comment from Pedro Falling Sailor. Now, he wrote that at the beginning of the presentation. I hope I'm still all the way with him. By the end of the presentation. Here is another comment. Wait, I'm going to figure out. Sorry, technology. I'm going to figure out the technology. It's just a second. Okay, here. Don't forget that not all kids want to helm, and having a double hander can help keep some in sailing longer if they crew with a pal. That is absolutely true, and I've seen also many girls, especially girls in youth sailing programs, who just don't want to sail the Optimist. They don't want to sail alone. And but what is interesting also with DRS Fever is that there is no specialization from a physique viewpoint. You don't have the tall, heavier crew that is going to do the trapeze and a lighter helm. So you can have also situations where the two members of the team will interchange roles and learn both the crew element and the helm element. So both. So this is an important I think, positive aspect of DRS Viva to allow that compared to single trapeze boats. Michael Schwarzer from Germany. I'm still with you up to now. That's nice because I'm done with my slides, huh? Any other questions or any suggestions, comments? Here is also a comment by Michael Schwarzer. Leaving out the 4.7 actually, in my humble opinion, means neglecting physiological facts. Yes, certainly. You know, you have the physique, the ability to train in the laser radial. When I sailed the laser standard rig in 25 knots, you know, the thing I really would like to do is to switch to the radial, but I'm way heavier than a youth sailor out of the Optimist. This is completely crazy how the laser radial has been pushed so much as a youth sailor of sailboat after the Optimist. And I think also there are psychological elements, there are age group elements. And this is, I think, a reason why the 4.7 is so popular in Europe, because it attracts boys and girls of an age group of, let's say, age 15, 16, and that is actually extremely important to find the right age group for the sailors. And you have the right age group in the DRS Viva, you have it in the Laser 4.7. When you jump to the radial, you don't, you know, the kid who is 13, 14, 15 is not going to fit well. Let me check if there are other comments. Here is one. Alfred from Malta, who is an amazing musician too. And what does he say? Girls thrive on company. We have girl sailors who did not take well to switching from Viva to Laser when we wanted to build a performance team. Yeah, you have, I think a rule of thumb is about 50% of the sailors prefer to sail double-handed. They want to have company. And it's very strong with girls in the age group of 10 to age 15, let's say. Here is another comment. Tony Pettersson, in Sweden we see that there are double-handed sailors skipping the FIVA and going straight to the 29er as a stepping stone to 49er and 49er FX. Yes, I see that in Canada too. I think that DRS FIVA will find a good spot if it takes new sailors who don't want to do the Optimist. For example, you can have a beginner sailor as a crew initially, learning as a crew to sail and being part of the FIVA, but also you may have kids going through the FIVA after the Optimist. What I think is important is to facilitate that by having club-owned boats. The FIVA is a perfect boat for club ownership because it's very sturdy. So even a period of 6 months or 1 year may help. But for sure, if the parents need to purchase a boat for just a short period, it's very different. I did a few searches on Google about the cost of chartering a boat. Chartering a 29er is much more expensive than chartering a FIVA. So also the FIVA, for example, unlike the Optimist, you can participate in the Worlds without too much of a restriction. You can participate in the Europeans, and you are going to access reasonably priced charter boats. Unlike the 29er or even the I-420, the charter boats are expensive. In the Laser too. Per sailor, the best deal is the RS FIVA and actually the Open Big too. So it's really important to take a range of elements into consideration. Let me see other questions or remark. Yes, here is a comment from a gentleman from New Zealand. Yes, at the age of 15, I was 1 meter 83 centimeters and 78 kilos. And yes, that was my situation actually, quite funnily too. And I sailed the Snipe as a crew. And I remember I had very good experience to the point that I'm a Facebook friend with Dirk de Bock, who was the helm. I was sailing with as a crew, and I learned a lot. We were sailing the North Sea. And one needs a lot of flexibility in terms of finding the right pathway. But for sure, at 78 kilos, you can, you're just a little bit too heavy for the radial. But if you're not a very good sailor, you can still sail the radial at 78 and then move to the laser standard. You see, as a man. So there are many. There are still many options even for people growing fast. And here is another comment. The Europe dinghy. Yeah, the Europe dinghy. Actually, the Europe. I'm of Belgian origin, and the Europe dinghy was developed. The design is from Belgium, and I've always seen that boat when I was a youth sailor. When I was 10, 15, I was seeing that boat, and I was already wondering, how the heck do they go through under the boom, you see, and there is not even space to put a helmet, I think, there. It's quite an amazing boat. It was replaced, it was Olympic, and then it was replaced by the Laser Radial, and it's one of the trends that is maybe questionable. If you look at the Optimist, it's a very technical boat. You have a mass rake adjustment, and the sailing adjustments are crazily complex on the Optimist. You have plenty of choices of mass booms and splits and the sails. And then one puts the kids into lasers where you don't have a mass rate adjustment. You have only one type of boom mast. You have only well, supposedly, because in reality there are variations. And so the Europe is a more kind of conventional boat, like the Optimist and like the Fin. And but the new there is an Italian journalist who commented on that and saying, well, we are evolving towards easy sailing in the sense that we don't even want to bother about mass rake adjustments. But the mass rake adjustments plus the choice of sails enable a wider range of sailors. That's why the Europe is probably a better suited boat, for example, for female sailing at the Olympic level than the Radial. But okay, the topic here is youth sailing, and I think also that there are still European countries which favor the Europe over the laser for youth sailing. All right, so if there are no further questions, I think we'll close the session. And I have to thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please contact me. I'm very easily reachable. And also, if you have any suggestions for further webinars, I'll be very, very happy to have one. I have several ideas in mind, but I'm pretty sure that you may come with some suggestions. So thank you for your attention, and see you next time. Take care.